Your time and attention are among the most valuable resources you possess, yet many people give them away far too freely, often to individuals who do not reciprocate or even appreciate the effort. Imagine pouring water into a cup with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you give, it will never be enough to fill it. This is exactly what happens when you invest your energy into someone who isn't willing or able to meet you halfway. It's a dynamic that leaves you feeling depleted, frustrated, and ultimately unfulfilled. The truth is, your energy is not infinite. It is a finite resource that requires careful management if you are to live a life of purpose, fulfillment, and peace. When you consistently reach out to someone who doesn't respond with the same enthusiasm, you're essentially devaluing your worth. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that if you just try harder or give more, they will eventually recognize your value. But in reality, the more you overextend yourself, the less they feel compelled to make any effort at all. This creates a dangerous imbalance where one person is doing all the giving and the other is simply taking. The longer this cycle continues, the harder it becomes to break free from it. The reason is simple: you've conditioned yourself to believe that their validation is worth the exhaustion you feel. But is it? Is someone who doesn't see your value really worth the emotional and mental energy you're expending? The energy you pour into unreciprocated efforts could be directed towards something far more meaningful: your own growth, goals, and happiness. Every moment you spend chasing someone's attention is a moment you could have used to pursue your dreams, develop a new skill, or nurture relationships that genuinely uplift and inspire you. Time is the one resource you can never get back. And every second you invest in someone who doesn't appreciate you is a second you're stealing from your future self. It's not just about reclaiming your energy, it's about recognizing the inherent value of that energy in the first place. In life, you attract what you project. When you allow yourself to be treated as an afterthought, you send a signal not just to the person you're chasing, but to the universe that you don't see yourself as a priority. And if you don't see yourself as a priority, why should anyone else? On the other hand, when you value your energy and guard it fiercely, you attract people and opportunities that respect and reflect that same energy. It's not magic, it's the natural outcome of setting boundaries and aligning your actions with your self-worth. It's important to understand that your time and attention are not just for anyone to claim. They are privileges, not rights. When you continuously contact someone who does not reciprocate, you dilute the power of your presence. People often take for granted what is readily available to them. By pulling back and withholding your energy from those who don't appreciate it, you create a sense of scarcity that forces them to reassess your value. This doesn't mean playing games or manipulating others. It's about recognizing that your worth does not depend on someone else's ability to see it. Every interaction you have costs you something, whether it's your time, your emotional energy, or your mental bandwidth. If you're not careful, these costs can add up, leaving you drained and with little left to give to the things and people that truly matter. Imagine how much lighter and more empowered you would feel if you redirected even half of that energy toward pursuits that bring you joy and fulfillment. The reality is, the more you pour into yourself, the less inclined you'll be to seek external validation. You won't need to chase anyone because you'll already feel complete within yourself. It's also worth noting that the way you allocate your energy sets a precedent for how others treat you. If you're always the one reaching out, initiating plans, or making an effort, you unintentionally teach others that they don't need to put in any effort to keep you around. People are naturally inclined to put the least amount of effort into relationships they believe require little maintenance. By constantly contacting someone who isn't giving you the same energy in return, you're reinforcing a dynamic that diminishes your value in their eyes. This is not to say they are inherently bad or malicious. It's simply human nature to prioritize what feels rare and valuable. Reclaiming your energy starts with a shift in mindset. It's not about proving your worth to someone else. It's about recognizing it for yourself. Once you do, you'll begin to see that the people who truly matter, the ones who genuinely care about you, will never make you feel like you're chasing after them. Instead, they will meet you with equal effort, respect, and appreciation. But you cannot attract these kinds of relationships until you make the decision to stop giving your energy to people who don't deserve it. When you stop contacting him or anyone who isn't reciprocating, you're not being cruel or dismissive. You're practicing self-respect. You're choosing to protect your peace, conserve your energy, and invest in your own well-being. This decision may feel difficult at first, especially if you've grown accustomed to seeking their attention. But with time, you'll realize that the freedom and clarity you gain are far more valuable than the fleeting satisfaction of a response that never truly fulfills you. Silence is one of the most profound tools you have at your disposal. It speaks volumes without saying a single word and often carries more weight than endless conversations. When you stop reaching out and choose to remain silent, it shifts the dynamics in any relationship. Suddenly, the balance of attention tilts, and the person you've been contacting is left to reflect on your absence. Silence creates a space for thought, a pause that forces them to confront what your presence in their life truly means. Most people are unprepared for the kind of clarity that silence brings because it reveals truths they may have been avoiding. When you constantly contact someone, your words can lose their impact. It's human nature to grow desensitized to things that are always present. But silence is different. It's noticeable, and it lingers. It's an active absence that cannot be ignored. When you stop contacting someone, it interrupts the routine they've grown accustomed to, even if they didn't realize how much they had come to depend on your messages, your calls, or your presence. Suddenly, there's a void, and human beings are wired to notice voids. They feel the weight of what's missing, and that feeling can provoke powerful realizations. In silence, you reclaim your power. Every time you reach out, you give a part of your energy to the other person. It's like handing over pieces of yourself, hoping they'll appreciate them. But when you choose to remain silent, you're no longer giving away that energy. Instead, you're keeping it within yourself, where it belongs. This isn't about manipulation or playing games. It's about honoring your worth. Silence allows you to set boundaries without needing to explain them. It's a way of saying, I value myself enough to step back and let you show me where I truly stand in your life. Silence also creates curiosity. People are naturally drawn to what they don't understand or what feels out of reach. When you're always available, there's nothing left for them to wonder about, no mystery to solve. But when you withdraw, they start to question, why haven't they contacted me? Did I do something wrong? What are they thinking? These questions can be uncomfortable for them, but they're necessary. They force the other person to evaluate their behavior and their role in the relationship. Silence shifts the burden of thought from you to them, and that shift can be transformative. Another powerful aspect of silence is that it forces the other person to take responsibility for their own actions or lack thereof. When you're always initiating contact, you're doing the emotional labor for both of you. You're the one keeping the connection alive, ensuring that communication continues. But when you stop, they have to decide whether the relationship is worth the effort. Silence reveals their true intentions. If they care, they'll reach out. If they don't, their inaction will speak volumes. Either way, you gain clarity, and clarity is one of the most liberating gifts you can give yourself. Choosing silence also gives you the opportunity to observe. When you're not caught up in the cycle of reaching out and waiting for a response, you can step back and see the bigger picture. How has this person been treating you? Have their actions matched their words? Do they add value to your life? Or are you holding on to an idea of who they could be rather than accepting who they truly are? Silence provides the space for these reflections, and it allows you to approach the relationship or the decision to move on from a place of strength and self-awareness. Silence isn't just for the other person, it's also for you. It's a form of self-care, a way to protect your peace and prioritize your emotional well-being. Constantly reaching out can be exhausting, especially when the effort isn't reciprocated. It creates a cycle of hope and disappointment that takes a toll on your mental health. By choosing silence, you break that cycle. You give yourself the time and space to heal, to regroup, and to focus on the things that truly matter. It's not about shutting yourself off from others. It's about choosing when and where to invest your energy. There's also a psychological aspect to silence that can't be ignored. Studies have shown that people are more likely to value something when they fear losing it. When you stop contacting someone, it introduces the possibility that they might lose you. This isn't about playing games or manipulating their emotions. It's about giving them the opportunity to recognize your value. And if they don't, then silence has done its job in showing you that your energy is better spent elsewhere. It's a win-win situation because either they step up or you gain the clarity you need to move forward. Silence can also inspire respect. People respect boundaries, even if they don't always like them. When you choose to remain silent, you're drawing a line in the sand and saying, I won't chase you. I won't beg for your attention. I know my worth. That kind of confidence is magnetic, and it can shift how others perceive you. It's not about being cold or distant. It's about showing that you value yourself enough to let them come to you. Respect starts with how you treat yourself, and silence is one of the most powerful ways to communicate self-respect without uttering a single word. Choosing silence requires strength because it's not always easy to resist the urge to reach out. But it's in that restraint that you find your power. Silence isn't about punishing the other person, it's about giving yourself the space to grow, to reflect, and to honor your own needs. It's a declaration of independence, a way of saying, I choose me. Silence, when wielded intentionally, can transform relationships, reveal truths, and bring you closer to the peace and clarity you deserve. It's a tool, a gift, and a reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing at all. Chasing someone's attention can become a habit, often without us realizing it. At first, it might feel like a natural part of nurturing a connection. You reach out because you care, because you want to share your thoughts or simply let them know you're thinking of them. But over time, when the response isn't equal or the effort is one-sided, it starts to feel more like a pursuit than a relationship. And the harder you chase, the more elusive their attention becomes. This dynamic isn't just frustrating, it's draining. It slowly chips away at your confidence, leaving you questioning your worth and wondering why you're the one always putting in the work. When you chase someone, you unintentionally place them on a pedestal, elevating their importance above your own. It creates an imbalance where their approval or acknowledgement becomes the ultimate goal. This is dangerous because it shifts your focus away from your own needs and self-worth. The more you chase, the more you send a subconscious message to yourself that their validation matters more than your peace of mind. This mindset can trap you in a cycle of constantly seeking, constantly giving, and constantly hoping for something that may never come. It's a game where the rules are stacked against you from the start. One of the reasons chasing feels so exhausting is because it often involves trying to control something that's beyond your reach, another person's feelings, actions, or decisions. No matter how much effort you put in, you cannot make someone care more, respond faster, or prioritize you if they're not naturally inclined to do so. People act based on their own motivations and feelings, not because of how much you want them to. Recognizing this truth is liberating because it frees you from the futile task of trying to force a connection or relationship that isn't mutual. The act of chasing also diminishes your power. In any relationship, personal or professional, there's a balance of energy and attention. When you're the one constantly initiating contact, making plans, or seeking interaction, you're tipping the scales in their favor. They become the focus of your energy, while you receive little in return. Over time, this imbalance starts to feel normal, and you may even convince yourself that it's your role to always be the one reaching out. But deep down, you know that this isn't sustainable or fair. Relationships should be reciprocal, with both parties investing equally in maintaining the connection. Chasing also clouds your judgment. When you're so focused on gaining someone's attention, it becomes easy to overlook red flags or dismiss behaviors that don't align with your values. You might find yourself making excuses for them, convincing yourself that they're just busy, distracted, or going through a tough time. While these things can sometimes be true, they shouldn't become a constant justification for one-sided effort. When you chase someone, your desire to keep the connection alive can blind you to the reality of the situation, leading you to ignore the very signs that suggest it's time to step back. Another critical aspect of chasing is that it often stems from a fear of loss. The idea of losing the connection, no matter how unbalanced it may be, can feel overwhelming. This fear can drive you to cling even harder, to try even more desperately to keep their attention. But in doing so, you're not just exhausting yourself, you're also creating a dynamic where they feel less inclined to make an effort. When someone knows that you'll always be there, no matter what, they have little incentive to change their behavior or appreciate your presence. In a way, chasing feeds their indifference, making it even harder to achieve the connection you're seeking. The energy you expend in chasing someone could be redirected toward far more fulfilling pursuits. Imagine all the time and emotional bandwidth you spent crafting the perfect message, waiting for a reply, or replaying interactions in your mind. Now think about what you could accomplish if you use that same energy to focus on yourself, your goals, your passions, your well-being. Chasing someone not only drains your energy, but also robs you of the opportunity to grow, learn, and thrive in other areas of your life. It's a high cost to pay for something that often yields little in return. What's more, chasing someone rarely results in the kind of relationship or connection you truly desire. Genuine relationships are built on mutual respect, shared effort, and authentic interest. When you have to chase someone to get their attention, it's a clear sign that those foundational elements are missing. And even if your chasing does result in some form of acknowledgement, it's unlikely to be lasting or meaningful. The truth is, you shouldn't have to convince anyone to value you or see your worth. Those who truly appreciate you will do so without needing to be persuaded. When you stop chasing, you create space for the right people and opportunities to enter your life. It's not about giving up, it's about letting go of what's not meant for you. By stepping back, you allow the natural flow of relationships to unfold. Those who genuinely care will notice your absence and make an effort to reach out. And those who don't, they were never truly invested in the first place. Either way, you're better off because you're no longer wasting your energy on something that isn't aligned with your worth. The act of chasing can also lead to resentment, both toward the person you're pursuing and toward yourself. You might start to feel anger or frustration toward them for not responding the way you want, or you might criticize yourself for continuing to try. This resentment can build over time, poisoning not just the relationship, but also your own sense of self-esteem. By choosing to stop chasing, you break free from this cycle and reclaim your peace. You remind yourself that your worth isn't tied to someone else's attention or approval, and you open the door to healthier, more balanced connections. When you repeatedly reach out to someone who doesn't reciprocate, you unintentionally disrupt the natural balance of relationships. Healthy connections thrive on mutual effort, where both individuals contribute equally to the bond. But when you constantly initiate, constantly call, constantly text, or go out of your way to make yourself available, you inadvertently create an uneven dynamic. Over time, this imbalance starts to feel like the norm, not only to you, but also to the other person. They begin to expect that you will always be the one to make the effort, and as a result, their own contributions diminish. They become passive, perhaps indifferent, and you're left doing all the work to keep the connection alive. This unbalanced energy dynamic can be exhausting. It's not just physical effort, it's emotional labor, the kind that weighs on you even when you're not actively engaging with the person. You spend time overthinking, analyzing their responses or lack thereof, and wondering what you could do differently to elicit the attention or affection you desire. This mental preoccupation eats away at your peace, leaving you drained and distracted. What's more, the imbalance creates a sense of dependency. You find yourself relying on their occasional, often inconsistent responses to validate your actions and justify your pursuit. But this kind of one-sided interaction isn't a connection, it's a chase, and you deserve far better. When you stop contacting someone who isn't putting in equal effort, you allow the balance to naturally reset. By stepping back, you shift the dynamic and take the pressure off yourself to constantly keep the relationship afloat. It's a liberating act because it forces the other person to take responsibility for their role in the connection. If they care and value the relationship, they'll notice your absence and make an effort to bridge the gap. But if they don't, it becomes clear that the imbalance wasn't just circumstantial, it was a reflection of their lack of investment in the first place. This clarity is powerful because it frees you from the illusion that you were ever on equal footing. Another critical aspect of breaking this cycle is recognizing the emotional toll that chasing someone takes. It's easy to fall into the trap of believing that persistence will eventually win them over, that if you just try a little harder or give them a little more time, they'll come around. But the reality is that genuine connections don't require constant effort to maintain. When you find yourself always being the one to initiate, it's not a sign of a deep, meaningful relationship, it's a red flag. It signals that the other person isn't willing or perhaps isn't capable of meeting you halfway. And when you ignore this imbalance, you set a precedent that says it's okay for them to do less while you do more. The emotional cost of this imbalance can manifest in subtle but significant ways. You might start to feel unappreciated or undervalued, questioning whether your efforts are ever enough. This feeling can seep into other areas of your life, affecting your self-esteem and making you second-guess your worth. Over time, the constant push to maintain the relationship can erode your confidence, leaving you feeling like you're the problem when, in reality, the issue lies in the lack of reciprocity. It's not your responsibility to carry the weight of a connection on your own, and realizing this is the first step toward reclaiming your sense of balance and self-worth. By choosing to stop contacting someone who isn't reciprocating, you send a powerful message, not just to them, but also to yourself. You're declaring that your time, energy, and emotions are valuable and that you won't waste them on someone who doesn't appreciate them. This act of self-respect can be transformative because it forces you to reevaluate what you truly want and deserve in a relationship. It's not about punishing the other person or playing games. It's about establishing boundaries that protect your emotional well-being and ensure that your energy is invested in connections that uplift and support you. In many cases, this shift in energy can have a profound impact on the dynamic of the relationship. When someone becomes accustomed to you always being the one to reach out, they may start to take your presence for granted. But when you step back, it disrupts their expectations and forces them to confront the reality of their own behavior. They might realize that they've been neglecting the relationship and make an effort to change. Or they might choose to let the connection fade, which can be painful but also freeing. Either way, you gain clarity and take back control over how your energy is spent. It's also important to understand that not all relationships are meant to be balanced. Some people simply aren't capable of giving as much as they take, and that's okay. But it's not your job to compensate for their lack of effort. When you stop chasing and start prioritizing yourself, you create space for healthier, more balanced connections to enter your life. You attract people who value you for who you are, not for what you can do for them. And this shift in focus allows you to build relationships that are rooted in mutual respect, trust, and shared effort. The act of stepping back can be uncomfortable, especially if you've been the one holding the relationship together for a long time. You might feel a sense of loss or fear that the connection will fade away completely. But this discomfort is a necessary part of the process. It's a sign that you're breaking free from the patterns that no longer serve you and making room for something better. By letting go of the need to constantly reach out, you're giving yourself the gift of peace and allowing the relationship to find its natural balance, or to end if that's what's meant to happen. When you continue reaching out to someone who shows little to no effort in reciprocating, you inadvertently communicate to them that your time, energy, and emotions are readily available, regardless of how they treat you. This unintentional signal sends a message that you may not value yourself enough to expect the same level of effort in return. It's a subtle but powerful dynamic that can shape how they view and interact with you. Over time, this lack of mutual respect can erode the foundation of any relationship, leaving you feeling overlooked and underappreciated while they feel no urgency to change their behavior. When you decide to stop contacting someone who isn't putting in equal effort, you are reclaiming the narrative about your own worth. You're essentially saying, without words, I value myself enough to step back from situations where I'm not valued in return. This silent assertion of self-worth is more impactful than any verbal confrontation because it's rooted in action, and actions resonate far deeper than words. By choosing not to reach out, you allow the other person to recognize your absence and confront the reality of their own behavior. This creates a space for them to reflect on whether they have been taking you for granted, and if they truly care, to take meaningful steps to bridge the gap. However, this shift isn't just about them, it's about you too. It's about recognizing that your energy is not infinite and should not be given freely to those who don't respect it. The effort you expend trying to maintain a one-sided relationship could be redirected toward nurturing connections that uplift you, or focusing on personal growth and well-being. This redirection of energy is liberating because it removes the invisible weight of always feeling like you have to do more to be seen, heard, or appreciated. It puts you back in control of how your time and effort are spent, ensuring they are invested in people and activities that genuinely align with your values and goals. The psychological shift that occurs when you stop contacting someone who undervalues you is profound. At first, you might feel a void, as though something is missing from your daily routine. After all, the act of reaching out may have become habitual, a reflex born out of a desire for connection. But as you sit with this discomfort, you begin to realize that the void isn't a loss, it's an opening. It's an opportunity to fill that space with something more fulfilling, whether that's spending time with people who value you, exploring a new passion, or simply enjoying your own company. This realization can be transformative because it reinforces the idea that your happiness doesn't depend on someone else's validation. Another significant aspect of stepping back is the power of perspective. When you're caught in the cycle of chasing someone's attention, it's easy to lose sight of how one-sided the relationship has become. But when you stop and give yourself time to reflect, you start to see things more clearly. You might notice patterns of behavior you overlooked before, such as how often you're the one initiating contact or how little effort they put into maintaining the connection. This clarity is crucial because it helps you understand that the imbalance wasn't a reflection of your worth, but rather a sign of their lack of investment. And with this understanding comes the strength to let go of relationships that no longer serve you. Choosing to stop contacting someone also sets an important precedent for future relationships. It establishes a boundary that says you will not settle for less than you deserve. This boundary isn't about being harsh or unkind. It's about protecting your peace and ensuring that your energy is spent on people who value and respect you. It's a standard you set for yourself, one that will attract healthier, more balanced connections in the future. By demonstrating that you won't tolerate one-sided relationships, you encourage others to meet you at your level, creating a foundation for mutual respect and effort. The act of stepping back also gives the other person an opportunity to show their true intentions. When you stop reaching out, you create space for them to step up and take initiative if they genuinely care about the relationship. If they do, their actions will speak volumes and you'll know that their efforts are authentic. But if they don't, it's a clear sign that their lack of effort wasn't circumstantial, it was a choice. And while this realization can be painful, it's also freeing because it allows you to move forward without lingering doubts or questions about what could have been. It gives you closure, not because they offered it, but because you created it for yourself. This process of stepping back and reclaiming your self-worth isn't easy. It requires courage to confront the discomfort of letting go and faith in your own value, to know that you deserve better. But with each day that you resist the urge to reach out, you grow stronger. You begin to see that your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how you treat yourself. This internal shift is empowering because it reminds you that you have the ability to create the kind of relationships you want, ones that are rooted in mutual respect, effort, and care. What's more, by choosing to prioritize yourself, you set an example for others. You show them what it looks like to value your own time and energy, to have standards, and to hold people accountable for how they treat you. This quiet confidence is magnetic because it comes from a place of self-assuredness. It's not about arrogance or pride, it's about knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less. And as you embody this mindset, you inspire others to do the same, creating a ripple effect of healthier, more balanced relationships in your life and beyond. When you constantly reach out to someone who isn't reciprocating your efforts, you're not only depleting your own emotional resources, but you're also allowing them to dictate the terms of the relationship. This dynamic is often rooted in an unconscious belief that their approval or attention is necessary for your happiness or self-worth. However, by continuing to pursue someone who isn't equally invested, you're giving away control of the relationship, allowing it to operate on their terms rather than yours. The act of continually chasing their attention or affection, despite their lack of response, ultimately places you in a vulnerable position where you feel powerless and unseen. Stopping the cycle of reaching out is a deliberate reclaiming of your own power. It's a recognition that your happiness and emotional well-being should not hinge on another person's actions or responses. When you stop contacting someone who doesn't reciprocate, you're making a conscious decision to take back the control you unknowingly handed over. You are no longer subject to their indifference or unpredictability, and that shift alone can have a transformative effect on your sense of self. The emotional burden of constantly wondering whether they'll respond, whether they care, or whether they'll acknowledge your efforts is lifted, and with it comes a profound sense of freedom. But the act of stepping back goes beyond simply protecting your emotional health. It is also an opportunity for personal growth and self-reflection. When you are no longer distracted by the uncertainty of a one-sided relationship, you can start to focus on your own needs, desires, and goals. This period of detachment provides you with the clarity to reassess your own expectations and what you truly want from your relationships. Without the noise of trying to gain someone's attention or approval, you create space for self-discovery, growth, and healing. It's a moment to pause and reflect on what matters most to you beyond the external validation that you might have sought before. During this time, you also learn to develop a stronger relationship with yourself. You begin to realize that your value is not determined by how others perceive you, but by how you perceive yourself. When you stop chasing someone who doesn't reciprocate your feelings or efforts, you start to understand that your worth isn't based on their actions, but on your own understanding of your strengths, passions, and potential. This newfound sense of self-worth strengthens your resilience and allows you to face future challenges with more confidence and poise. You stop relying on the approval or validation of others to feel complete, and instead you become the source of your own affirmation. Furthermore, stepping back from someone who doesn't engage with you in a meaningful way provides an opportunity to create healthier patterns for future relationships. When you are no longer entangled in a one-sided dynamic, you can start to focus on the qualities that truly matter in a partnership: mutual respect, understanding, and a shared commitment to growth. Relationships should never feel like a struggle or a constant game of give and take, where one person is always doing the giving and the other is doing the taking. True connections are based on reciprocity, where both individuals bring their full selves to the relationship and contribute in equal measure. By stepping away from relationships that lack this balance, you are making space for those that are more aligned with your values and desires. Another key benefit of stopping the cycle of reaching out is that it shifts the energy in the relationship. Often, when one person is always the one to initiate contact, the other may take the connection for granted. The absence of consistent communication can serve as a wake-up call to the other person, prompting them to reflect on their own level of investment. In some cases, they may recognize your absence and make an effort to reach out and reestablish the connection. However, if they don't, their actions will speak volumes, providing you with the clarity you need to move forward without any lingering doubts. It's important to understand that sometimes letting go is the best thing you can do for both yourself and the other person, allowing the relationship to either flourish through mutual effort or naturally fade away when it no longer serves either of you. The concept of letting go also allows for a greater sense of emotional autonomy. When you stop contacting someone who isn't engaging with you, you take ownership of your emotional state. Instead of being at the mercy of their responses or lack thereof, you choose how to respond. You stop waiting for someone else's approval or acknowledgement to feel validated or worthy. In doing so, you become the master of your emotional landscape, no longer allowing someone else's actions to dictate your moods or self-worth. This emotional sovereignty is liberating because it reminds you that your emotional well-being is your responsibility and that you have the power to control how you react to situations, regardless of external circumstances. Moreover, by stepping back, you give yourself the opportunity to break free from any unhealthy attachment patterns that may have formed. In many cases, when we find ourselves constantly reaching out to someone who doesn't reciprocate, we've developed an unhealthy attachment to their approval, their responses, or the idea of the relationship. Letting go of this attachment can be difficult because it requires you to confront the fear of rejection or the uncertainty of not knowing what might happen if you continue to pursue the connection. However, once you release this attachment, you begin to reclaim your emotional freedom. You no longer feel chained to the idea of a relationship with someone who isn't equally invested. And in doing so, you open up the space to form deeper, more fulfilling connections with people who are aligned with your values and who will offer the same level of commitment that you bring. Finally, the act of stepping away allows you to practice the art of detachment. Detachment does not mean that you stop caring or that you're cold or indifferent. It means that you release the emotional dependency on a particular outcome. When you let go of someone who isn't reciprocating your efforts, you stop tying your happiness to their actions. You allow the relationship to unfold as it naturally should, without forcing or manipulating it to meet your expectations. This practice of detachment is empowering because it teaches you that your worth is not dependent on any one individual, but on your own sense of self. By learning to detach in this way, you become more resilient, more self-sufficient, and more open to the possibility of creating relationships that truly nourish you. When you stop contacting someone who isn't responding to you, the space you create can be immensely powerful, not just for the other person, but more importantly for yourself. The act of withdrawing communication isn't merely about cutting off the person, it's about reclaiming your time, energy, and emotional well-being. You might feel conflicted at first, especially if you've grown accustomed to the dynamic of constantly reaching out. It can feel unnatural, even painful, but this initial discomfort is often the precursor to deep personal growth and transformation. The discomfort you feel isn't a sign of weakness, it's an indication that you are challenging old patterns that no longer serve your highest good. This decision to step back offers an opportunity to reconnect with your inner self. When you remove the distractions of waiting for a response or seeking validation from someone who isn't meeting you halfway, you create an open space where you can rediscover your own voice and needs. Often we get so caught up in other people's actions and reactions that we lose sight of our own desires, aspirations, and boundaries. By stepping back, you allow yourself the freedom to focus on your own life and growth. You give yourself permission to nurture your own interests, goals, and passions without the interruption of uncertainty or emotional turbulence. In the silence that follows your decision, you may begin to hear your inner voice more clearly. This is the voice that is often drowned out by the noise of trying to please others, especially in relationships that feel unbalanced. The more you listen to this voice, the more you'll understand what you truly want and deserve from your connections with others. It's a process of self-discovery where you start to recognize the traits you value in others, the kind of relationships that bring you peace, and the behaviors that you will no longer tolerate. This clarity is essential for creating healthier, more fulfilling connections moving forward. One of the most profound outcomes of choosing not to contact someone who isn't reciprocating your efforts is the sense of empowerment it brings. In relationships, especially those that are emotionally charged or one-sided, it's easy to feel as though you have no control. You might feel at the mercy of the other person's behavior, constantly waiting for their acknowledgement or attention. However, by taking a step back and stopping contact, you immediately reclaim control over your own actions and emotional state. You are no longer waiting for someone else to decide how you feel or how much effort you should put into the relationship. Instead, you are making a conscious choice about how you want to allocate your energy, time, and emotions. As you exercise this control over your own life, you begin to rebuild your sense of self-worth. Relationships should be reciprocal, and when you consistently invest in someone who doesn't meet you halfway, it can begin to erode your confidence. You may start to question your value, wondering why your efforts aren't being acknowledged or returned. But by stepping back, you make a powerful statement to yourself: you are worthy of respect, of effort, and of reciprocal love. This recognition of your own worth is the foundation for all future relationships. It teaches you that you are not to be an afterthought in someone else's life, but a priority in your own. As you come to terms with your value, you stop settling for less than you deserve. This process also teaches you the importance of boundaries. When you constantly reach out to someone who isn't reciprocating, you are essentially ignoring your own boundaries in favor of theirs. You're putting their needs and attention above your own emotional health. Stopping contact allows you to reestablish those boundaries and prioritize your own needs. You recognize that your emotional well-being is non-negotiable and that you have the right to expect others to meet you with the same level of respect and effort that you give. Boundaries are not meant to isolate you from others. They are meant to protect your peace and ensure that you are not sacrificing your happiness for the sake of someone who doesn't appreciate you. By enforcing these boundaries, you begin to attract relationships that honor and respect your emotional needs. In addition to reinforcing boundaries, this process of detaching can also help you break free from unhealthy attachment patterns. Many times, when we find ourselves continuously reaching out to someone who isn't reciprocating, we have developed an emotional attachment to the idea of the relationship itself, rather than the actual person. We become attached to the hope of what the relationship could be, rather than accepting it for what it truly is. By stepping back, you are learning to release these unhealthy attachments, and in doing so, freeing yourself from the emotional roller coaster of waiting and wondering. This release allows you to embrace the reality of the situation and stop holding on to false hope. It might be a painful realization, but it's also liberating as it clears the emotional clutter and allows you to move forward with a sense of clarity and purpose. Furthermore, withdrawing from someone who isn't responding opens up the possibility for new connections to enter your life. Relationships are not just about who you are giving to, they are also about the energy you are receiving. When you continually pour effort into a relationship that isn't balanced, you leave little room for other, more fulfilling connections to blossom. By stopping contact, you create space for people who will genuinely appreciate and reciprocate your effort. These new connections can be nourishing, supportive, and mutually fulfilling, and they can help restore your faith in the potential of relationships. As you open yourself to new experiences and new people, you will find that relationships built on mutual respect and effort will bring you far more joy and satisfaction than any one-sided dynamic ever could. The space created by stopping contact also provides an opportunity for healing. Emotional healing doesn't happen overnight, especially when you've invested a lot of time and energy into a person who hasn't reciprocated. The hurt, the confusion, and the self-doubt that can arise from these situations take time to heal. However, by withdrawing from the situation, you allow yourself to focus on your own healing process without the added complication of trying to navigate the emotional turbulence that comes with waiting for someone who doesn't value you. This healing period is essential for moving forward in a healthy way, as it enables you to process the emotional residue of the situation and regain your emotional equilibrium. In time, you will emerge stronger, more self-assured, and ready to approach future relationships from a place of emotional wholeness.